My mother's email came on Thursday again concerning Alexander's graduation weekend. Final details. Dear Rachel, we are so excited about Alexander's graduation from medical school on Saturday. We have reserved seats for the family. Dad, me, Aunt Caroline, Uncle Tom, and Grandma. Unfortunately, the seats in the auditorium are limited, and we could only get 6 tickets in our blog. Since you've been having so much trouble with your fatigue lately, we thought you might prefer to watch the live stream from the hotel room, so you can rest and do not have to mess with the crowds. We then all celebrate together at dinner in love, Mom. I read 3 times. My hands were shaking slightly, not from emotion, but because of the muscle tremor that had become my constant companion over the past 8 months. My younger brother Alexander was about to complete his medical studies at the University Hospital Steinberg, and thus fulfill our parents' dream of having a doctor in the family. For 4 years, every family reunion had revolved around his studies, his clinical rotations, and his upcoming residency. Mom had a countdown on the refrigerator. Dad had already ordered business cards, on which was written Father of Dr. Alexander Biker. When I noticed the first symptoms a few months ago, devastating exhaustion, muscle weakness, difficulty swallowing, I had dismissed them at first. I was a researcher in a biotech company and worked long hours. Stress seemed a logical explanation, but the symptoms got worse. I started to fall frequently. My language was washed out. My hands were shaking so much that I couldn't hold a coffee cup anymore. After 6 months of tests, I was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis, a neuromuscular autoimmune disease in which my immune system attacked the communication between my nerves and muscles. I tried to explain it at a family dinner. It's called myasthenia gravis. My immune system attacks my neuromuscular connections and causes progressive muscle weakness. I am starting an immunosuppressive therapy, and Alexander had interrupted me without looking up from his mobile phone. Sounds psychosomatic. Classic conversion disorder. You are stressed because of work. Your body manifests physical symptoms. Quite often, actually. You should see a therapist. I went to 6 neurologists. I have a confirmed diagnosis, the antibody tests. Antibody tests can be false positive, he had said derogatorily. You learn that in the first year. Most of these mysterious autoimmune diseases are just anxiety and trying to get attention. My parents had nodded in agreement. Dad held my hand. Alexander must know, honey. He's almost a doctor. Maybe you just overdo it at work. Have you tried yoga? After that evening, my health became Rachel's exhaustion problem in family conversations. When I had to use a Gia stock after a particularly bad push, Alexander told relatives, I'm dramatic. When I missed his white coat ceremony because I was in the hospital because of a myasthenic crisis, he sent a text message. Nice guilt number, really subtle. What they didn't know, and what I had stopped explaining after being rejected over and over again, was that my case had become medically significant. My neurologist, Professor Dr. Patricia Morgenstern, was not only a leading researcher, she was the dean of Alexander's University. My case was unusual enough that Professor Morgenstern had asked me to participate in a study on therapy-resistant myasthenia gravis. My anonymized files were used in the 4th-year neurology curriculum as an example of complex autoimmune management. Professor Morgenstern had mentioned it casually once. Your case is currently teaching medical students. They contribute to the training of future doctors, unknowingly also to that of their brother. I looked at Mom's email again. The proposal of the live stream. Too tired for the crowds. As if my progressive neuromuscular disease was just a little drowsiness, I answered simply. I will take care of my arrival and the place myself. See you Saturday. Then I called the dean's office. Her assistant answered immediately. Ms. Bakker, how do you feel ready for Saturday? Professor Morgenstern has reserved a place for you in the faculty area. She would like to have you there when she awards the research prizes. She presents my case at the graduation party, I asked. My breath caught. The anonymized version. Yes, it is part of the neurology department's showcase to show how student learning affects real patients. On Saturday morning, I took my medications of immunosuppressive polynesterase hammers, steroids, and carefully dressed in a navy blue dress that hid tremors reasonably well. I took my G-stock with me, not because I always needed it, but because I had learned to deal realistically with my limits. I arrived at the auditorium early. The faculty entrance had barrier-free access and reserved parking spaces. Professor Morgenstern met me inside, her expression warm but professional. Rachel, thank you for coming. How are you today? Today is a good day. Minimal ptosis. The tremor is controlled. Award. They sit in the second row of the faculty area right next to the chairman of neurology. Does Alexander know that I will be here? I asked. Her expression flickered briefly. Your brother is graduating today. I didn't realize they were related until I checked the seating requests for the ceremony and saw their family name. Are there any complications that I should know about? He doesn't think my diagnosis is real. He thinks I'm faking for attention. My family couldn't get a place for me, so they suggested I watch from the hotel. Professor Morgenstern's jaw tightened. I'm catching on. Well, you have a reserved place with us, regardless of the arrangements of your family. The auditorium filled up quickly. I discovered my family in the middle block. Mom, Dad, Aunt Caroline, all dressed up and radiant. They did not look at the faculty area. Why should you too? The graduates marched in, their white coats of over-formal attire. Alexander was easy to spot, tall, confident, smiling. He had made it. 4 years of medical studies, and now he would be Dr. Alexander Becker. The ceremony began with the usual speeches. Then Professor Morgenstern came to the podium for the festive speech. Graduates, families, faculty. Today we are celebrating 4 years of dedication. They studied anatomy, pathology, pharmacology. But today I want to talk about the most important skill in medicine: listening. She clicked on her first slide. In their careers, they will encounter patients whose conditions do not fit into textbook templates, and they will be tempted, because they are people, to dismiss what they do not immediately understand, to label complexity as psychosomatic. The auditorium was silent. I would like to share a case that our neurology students studied this year. A 32-year-old woman with progressive muscle weakness and ptosis. My heart was pounding against my ribs. I saw Alexander in the third row. He took notes as if this was just another lecture. It took 6 months and several specialists. Myasthenia gravis. The delay occurred partly because her symptoms were atypical, but also because several therapists dismissed her worries as an anxiety disorder or a search for attention. Professor Morgenstern made a meaningful pause. A practitioner, he tragically a medical student, during a clinical rotation explicitly told family members that the patient was faking symptoms only to get pity. Alexander had stopped writing. His pen hovered over his notebook. This patient is here today. Rachel Becker, would you please stand up? Time seemed to stand still. I got up carefully, clutched my walking stick for stability, and felt hundreds of eyes on me. I looked at the family block. Mom's face had turned chalky white. Dad was staring at me with his mouth open, and Alexander had completely turned around in his seat and was staring at the faculty area. His expression, a mixture of pure horror and disbelief. Professor Morgenstern continued, her voice seriously. Which brings me to a difficult matter. During our last review of graduates, a serious concern was brought to my attention. A member of this class has claimed, despite documented medical evidence, that a family member is only pretending to have a serious autoimmune disease. The mood in the auditorium changed. Students exchanged nervous glances. Medicine requires not only knowledge, but empathy and humility. A doctor who rejects documented diseases, who accuses patients of lying without evidence, who puts his own assumptions about medical reality, this doctor is dangerous. Such a doctor will harm people. She paused. A student who has already shown a willingness to harm a patient by gas conducting has not yet earned the right to take the annoying oath. Alexander had become chalk pale. Therefore, until a formal examination by the ethics committee, a student's diploma is withheld today. The silence was deafening. Then whispers broke out all over the hall. Students turned around, tried to figure out who was meant, but I knew it. And just as Alexander was huddled together in his seat, he also knew it. Professor Morgenstern finished her speech. The ceremony continued. When Alexander's name was called, there was a confused pause. Professor Morgenstern simply announced that Alexander Becker's diploma award had been suspended due to an ethics examination. Alexander walked across the stage. There was only a few uncertain applause. He did not receive a certificate folder. He shook Professor Morgenstern's hand and walked off on the opposite side, his face completely blank. After the ceremony, a chaotic jumble of voices broke out in the auditorium. My family pushed their way through the crowd to the faculty area. Mom reached me first. Her face overflows with tears. Rachel. Oh my God, Rachel, you're the patient, the case study, all the time. Yes. And Alexander told people that you were simulating. He said that to Kamlatans, to us. Her voice broke. His diploma is being withheld because of what he said about you. Dad looked like he was hit by a blow. We didn't know. We didn't understand how serious it is, Rachel. We thought you were just tired. You thought Alexander was the expert because he's studying medicine, I said quietly. You believed him when he said I was simulating, even though I had a confirmed diagnosis from 6 specialists. You suggested yoga instead of listening to me when I explained my treatment protocol. Alexander appeared, accompanied by Professor Morgenstern. He stopped a few meters away, unable to look me in the eye. Professor Morgenstern's face was made of granite. Mr. Becker, your family is here. This seems to be an appropriate time for the apology. Alexander's voice was barely audible. Rachel, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Your diagnosis is real. I put my own ego above your health. You told people I'm simulating for pity, I said, my voice firm, despite the trembling in my hands. You did this while learning exactly about the illness I have. What kind of doctor does such a thing? A bad one, whispered Alexander. Professor Morgenstern is right. I don't deserve to graduate today. Professor Morgenstern turned to my parents. Your son will have to complete 60 hours of ethics training, accompany our neurology department for a month, and write a research paper on medical gaslighting before his diploma is released. In addition, I strongly recommend that your entire family attend trainings on chronic diseases. In the following months, Alexander fulfilled his obligations. He accompanied Professor Morgenstern, observed patient consultations and complex case management. He wrote his work on how confirmation errors and diagnostic arrogance lead to patient harm. He accompanied me to my infusion appointments and saw firsthand what a life with myasthenia gravis really means. 6 months after the graduation party, we met for a coffee. He looked different, more modest, somehow older. The diploma came yesterday, he said. Next week, there will be a small ceremony for the 3 of us whose graduations were delayed. Congratulations. I do not deserve congratulations. I almost became the kind of doctor who kills people. I'm going to general medicine. I want to become a family doctor, especially for patients whose conditions are complex and are dismissed by other doctors. Our family slowly built up trust again, even if it looked different than before. They came to my appointments, learned the reality of autoimmune management. Mom joined a support group for relatives. Dad began to collect donations for research, but the most important change was simpler. They listened. When I said I was having a bad day, they believed me. Alexander finally began his residency. He sent me a photo of his white coat with his name over the bag, Dr. Alexander Beeker. Under it, he had attached a pin, a purple bow, the symbol of awareness of myasthenia gravis. His caption read, "In honor of my first teacher who taught me that listening is not only good medicine, it's the only medicine that matters." He learned about it, they all did it. And for the first time since my diagnosis, I was no longer fighting my illness alone.
Monsieur,